Joe Biden says the Ukraine is not ready for NATO yet, and they may need democratization before they get there, which is funny because in the midst of this entire conflict, we've been told that they're the only true democracy in Eastern Europe, but we'll be talking about that. What's happening there, and a weird situation where the people who were suddenly, or were at one point, in favor of anything that it takes to get Ukraine across the finish line are now expressing some concerns about the Clusterbomb. So we'll be spending the majority of the show talking about NATO. In other news, an ex-US gymnast doctor who sexually abused girls was stabbed 10 times in prison. That's all that I have to say about that, but we'll be talking about the articles, what happened there, and why there was so little uproar about this, because, well, I guess sometimes the trash really does take itself out. Joe Biden attempts to get an injunction on the court order that he is not allowed to talk to social media companies to tell them what information and what people to censor out, and the federal judge tells him no, so we'll go over some of that and what's going on with that. And actor Hill Harper has entered Michigan's 2024 Senate race to replace outgoing Senator Debbie Stabenow. It's going to be all of this and more. I was the one flying the balloons. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. I will not mute, 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 I will not mute. Oh, hey, we are back here and we are live over here at Contemporary, everybody. Good evening, welcome to your evening news. My name is Jay Edgar, and we have got well, honestly, we actually don't have that much news to go over here today. This was a really quiet weekend, but we're going to take some time. We're actually going to play catch-up on some of the stuff that was left over from Friday night's stream, and we are back on our regular schedule as well. So come back and join us. 6 p.m. Central Time. Bring some friends, bring some relatives, bring some people that you hate. Get some people in here. We'll get some chat going. We'll get some controversy going. Let's get some stuff going. Plus, we play chat games around here, too, because that's always fun. I remember, what was it? How many times we could talk about bribery in movie titles, most of which I have not seen. That was actually a lot of fun. I was kind of pumped about that, but we are going to go over what we have to go over here today, including the controversy in the Ukraine, whether or not the cluster bombs are a good idea, and Democrats are saying no, let's not do this. This is a bridge too far. Well, some neocons are actually saying, let's go. Surprising absolutely nobody. Plus, we have got Trump going after Governor Reynolds in Iowa for trying to be neutral in the presidential race, which is kind of where she should be at this point. But I've got this feeling again that if he knew who I was, he would go on and he'd start truthing and retruthing. Oh, Contemporary, it's such a terrible thing because he doesn't just come down and support me blindly. I know, Jay Edgar, he's a great guy. He endorsed me in 2020. He made a video about it, but now he won't endorse me anymore. Because, yeah, there's no endorsement coming from here. And I am neutral. I hate both candidates evenly. So there's that Hill Harper going in and entering the Michigan senatorial race. And a little bit of fun from both the Daily Mail and Fox News a little bit later on in the stack, talking about Biden having some dementia/Alzheimer's moments, and the mainstream media refusing to cover that as well. There's going to be a lot of stuff here today, even though it was a slow weekend here on Contemporary. So get yourself some snacks, get some people in here, strap yourselves in, and let's have some fun, shall we? Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming, such as the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, the Porch Boys, Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, the No Gimmicks Podcast, Silent Caster, and Clown World Chronicles with Papa Palpatine. That's right, go check out all that great programming as we aim to bring you a better news and culture experience from the common man for the common man. And let's get right down into it. Stop getting your news from people who hate you. Get your news from people who are just like you. Let's get started. And we're going to start, as we always do, with our finance for the day. We're going to start with the Dow. Looking into your finance on that, the Dow spent the day up today, and the futures are also shooting up as we go here. The Dow ending today at 33,944.40 to end a 3-day losing streak on last week. That is up 209.52 points, or 0.2% on the day. Looking at your Bitcoin, which is sitting at a cool 30,348.60. That is up $201 and 60 US cents, or 0.2% on the day. There was a major spike just recently on the Bitcoin that just settled back off again, bringing us back to the point that we were at just before the spike happened. So a little bit of motion there. Looking over the weekend here, we see that there was another big spike on Thursday before sitting steadily throughout the remainder of the weekend, and the one big spike that just came today, and your Bitcoin is sitting at 33,48.60. So not a lot of motion with that. It's actually down on your 5-day because it started before the spike up a little bit, but that is what we see off your Bitcoin. The gas prices in the Madison area are catching up together again. 320 on the west side, now 320 on the east side, and gas here locally is actually coming down a little bit as well. So these gas prices do not reflect your local gas prices. Check your local listings to see what your gas prices are. Hopefully they are staying on the pattern that the Madison area is, and you're starting to get some reprieve, but always check your local listings for that. Let's grab our article from finance, and by the way, let's get the live chat up here. Check over my shoulder to make sure that I am actually still unmuted. Oh, we got some PCR testing going on over on the Rumble side. You know, there's still people wearing masks around here. A little surprising, but that's what we have for that. Ooh, we've got some stuff here. Mr. Scott says, ahoy, Mogwai, it's another Monday. Trying to play Will J. Edgar be muted or not? I am not. Mr. Scott's got some Jaeger, so we'll be seeing what happens with that. Goats and Scarves is here. Pineapple does not belong on pizza. I humbly disagree, but I do hope that you never have a pizza with pineapple on it because, well, I don't want you to have something that you hate. So I will continue to eat all of your share of the pineapple because my ideal pizza is sausage, onion, and pineapple. That is the best pizza out there. Mr. Scott says, I like Hawaiian pizza. I may even add dollops of cream cheese. That sounds interesting. I've never tried that, but that's something that I would try. Mogwai says, Sean Hannity's head was located up Trump's ass. Sean Hannity, the thing with Sean Hannity is he was like Rush in the sense that they both had their lips planted firmly around the shaft of whoever was the most prominent Republican at the time. Whether it was Boehner, whether it was Paul Ryan, whether it was Bush, or whether it was Trump. And you'll remember that both of them were slow to get on the Trump train when he was coming up because he wasn't the most prominent. It was going to be Jeb coming into that, and they were both all in for Jeb at the time. A lot of people don't remember that. Let's see. Mr. Scott says Sean Hannity. No. Mr. Scott says, whoa. Grant says Sean Hannity's an NPC. Mr. Scott says it's obvious how Prigozhin is paying his troops. Bitcoin. Saw someone wearing a mask while driving alone a few days ago. Mogwai says if ball gags count as a mask, well, Lindsey Graham is safe. Poor Jabba. Please clap. Alright, let's look at our finance report for the day. Boomboxes has joined us over on Rumble and says, I followed the science and got nowhere, so I followed the money and found the science. From CNBC, Dow closes 200 points higher on Monday to snap a 3-day losing streak. From Hak-Yoon Kim and Brian Evans. The Dow rose on Monday as Wall Street tried to recover from a losing week. The positive reversal came as investors prepared for a slate of inflation data later in the week and braced for the start of the second quarter earnings season. The Dow added 209.52 points, or 0.2% to close at 33,944.40. The S&P rose 0.25% to end at 4409.53. Meanwhile, the Nasdaq gained 0.18 to end at 13,685.48. The major averages broke 3-day losing streaks on all three. The Consumer Price Index is due on Wednesday, followed by the Producer Price Index, a measure of the wholesale price pressures, on Thursday. Last week, the S&P pulled back 1.16%, while the Nasdaq and the Dow fell 0.92 and almost 2% respectively. Despite non-farm payrolls growing less than expected in June, slightly stronger than expected wage growth raised concern over the potential for more Federal Reserve rate hikes. That said, Fundstrat's Tom Lee sees inflation report coming in lighter than expected, which could spark a rally. I don't think it will. That's going to be a part of the problem. You are seeing finished goods starting to fall a little bit, but your food prices are still wildly up, and that's affecting people's ability to buy the finished goods. That's why the finished goods are coming down, because people aren't buying them, and they're just sitting on the shelf, not making anybody any profit. And remember, the 10th rule of acquisition is anything that's worth doing is worth doing for profit. So that is what we have for that. We thought a tactical sort of opportunity was emerging because last week the market sold off because the jobs report was too strong. Yields really popped, so investors are kind of fearing Fed for longer. A little bit bearish into this week. I think core CPI could come in at 0.2 or better. Lee, the founder and head of research at Fundstrat Global Advisors, said on CNBC's Squawk Box on Monday. Well, we'll see. I know that the grocery prices are staying the same, and if not, even climbing a little bit. We've got one from The Verge for our layoffs report today. I have not seen The Sound of Freedom yet. I'm slated to go and do that at some point, but at this point yet I have not. I'd like to. I hear a lot of good things about it. Evernote has laid off most of its U.S. staff and will move most of its operations to Europe. From Wes Davis. Note-taking company Evernote has laid off most of its U.S. and Chile-based employees, the company announced yesterday. Now, Italian parent company Bending Spoons is taking the most of Evernote's operations to Europe. The company says the step is intended to boost operational efficiency and to make the most of the Bending Spoons employer brand, which is extremely strong in Europe. Bending Spoons acquired Evernote in November last year, and at the time, Evernote CEO was quoted as saying the deal would help the company work on building new features, using Bending Spoons' proven app expertise and a wide range of proprietary technologies. The company previously laid off 129 workers in February, with Bending Spoons' representative telling TechCrunch at the time that the company's unprofitable nature was unsustainable in the long term. So basically, Bending Spoons bought it for the IP and the hell with the workers. Evernote became one of the first popular note-taking apps when it launched in 2008, but has struggled since the mid-2010s as other similar apps began to steal some of its thunder, and the company has found itself bogged down in messes of its own making after weathering complaints about the app's bugginess and losing several executives. Evernote somehow made it out of its death spiral in 2016, the year in which it raised prices and was forced to renege on a controversial privacy policy that previously gave no option to opt out employees looking at users' content. The Verge has reached out to both Evernote and Bending Spoons for comment, but they have got none. No announcement as to how many people this has taken with it, so that is what we see on our layoffs report today. It's funny. And part of this is, like, philosophically, the fact that they're talking about Bending Spoons and people now having to make the most out of the fact that they're going to lose their jobs. I've been thinking a lot about the Matrix and, the way that it all goes. Red pill, blue pill. those are terms that are always on the front of people's minds because it's basically how we refer to one another based on how we interact with our current political climate and how we interact with each other on a daily basis. But one of the big things to take away from the Matrix is not necessarily the idea of seeing the world around you as for what it is, but also being able to do something with it. And I'm always reminded of the little Gandhi kid in the Oracle's office in the first movie, who reminds Neo, there is no spoon. That while you are living in the situation with the wool being pulled over your eyes, you still have the ultimate ability to self-improve and change the world around you. It's not the spoon that bends, it's yourself. And, again, I've looked at what I've done over the past few months. I've come back out. Oddly enough, I went to go off and pay bills this past weekend because it's second paycheck of the month, and realized that I couldn't pay my credit card bill yet because I wasn't done at the end. I wasn't through the billing cycle yet, so those are still hanging out there, which surprises me. But I'm caught up, and I've never felt this way, at least since I was 24. So there's that, and it does take an effort to go back and change what's around you, but Bending Spoon is changing what's around them. And they're bending over the people in the US whose jobs they just took away. Alright, I've got one more on finance here just to talk about what is happening in the markets here, archived from SF Gate. Let's see. Mr. Scott says, never even heard of Evernote. I have. I'm not surprised it isn't ever. The Alfalfa Kid. Oh. Mogwai says, the glitch in the Matrix is a major fucking bug. The black cat is walking by every 5 seconds. Let's see. Boomboxes says, new Hunter movie, total retard. Boomboxes says, Democrat voters bend all the time. Bend over. Alright, let's talk about mortgage rates for just a second. From SF Gate, mortgage rates for July 10th, rates soared to 2023 highs. That's right, even with so few people entering the market. From Lauren Williamson. Home buyers seeking to lower mortgage rates got more bad news last week. The average for a 30-year fixed surged to 7.14% as of July 7th. According to Mortgage News Daily, earlier in the week, they even touched 7.22 within spitting distance of the 20-year highs as they reached last November and November. In fact, real estate experts now advise that people who are waiting for the perfect moment to buy a house should give up trying to time mortgage rates, at least for the time being. Instead, they should go ahead and buy while prices are under pressure. Boy, that sounds like somebody who works for the best interests of the bank. With plans to refinance once mortgage rates finally cool. However, there are inklings that the Federal Reserve's aggressive rate hiking campaign is starting to cool the economy. The jobs report released on July 7th showed that 209,000 new jobs were added in June, the smallest gain in 2.5 years. The weaker market, combined with decelerating wage growth and calming consumer price inflation, are clear indications for the Federal Reserve to stop raising interest rates. No, they are not, said Lawrence Yoon, chief economist with the National Association of Realtors. Nonetheless, most analysts expect the Fed to hike with the benchmark borrowing rate 2 more times this year. I'm still saying 4, with the next increase coming up at its July meeting. So, if you are waiting to get in the house, you're probably still waiting at this point. But that is where we are at for that. Let's talk about the clusterfuck in Europe with the cluster bombs. We're actually going to start talking about the Trump proposal, with Zelensky and Pence both weighing in. We're going to start with Pence today from the Hill. The Bendy Spoon Kid played Alfalfa in Little Rascals. Did he? I'm trying to think about the timeline there because I don't remember when Little Rascals came out. Wasn't that in 95 or 96. Okay, that could be it. I thought that the two movies were further apart and the Alfalfa Kid would have been a little bit older than that. But, you learn something new every day. That's interesting. You know, what is weird is that Zach and Cody from the Disney Channel were Julian from Big Daddy. I didn't know that until like years later. Pence says Trump's Ukraine war promise requires giving Putin what he wanted. From Brett Samuels. Former Vice President Mike Pence on Monday chided former President Trump over his assertion that he could end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours, arguing that doing so would mean giving in to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Let's see, this is the all or nothing thing. Number one, this was the all or nothing thing that we started talking about the day that he said that. That's what Caitlin Collins tried to push down his throat and cram down his throat at the town hall. That in order to end anything at all, it means that we concede absolutely zero to Putin, nothing. And we can only see it and do things for the Ukraine, which is about the most idiotic stance that you can possibly come to. We'll read a little bit more from Mike Pence, and then I'm going to weigh in on this before we get into the Zelensky side of things. Pence, who is running against Trump for the 2024 GOP presidential nomination, was asked on Fox News how he believes the war in Ukraine will end. Before we read on to that, let me see if I can predict this. Coming from Pence, who is from the Bushite school of neoconservatism, it is, we're going to stay over there, we're going to continue putting troops, or we're going to start putting troops over there, and continue putting weapons over there, until we get war fatigue and we just have to go back and try to end it, and probably go approximately 20 to 30 years. Mike Pence says, I think it ends by giving the Ukrainians what they need to win, he said. I mean, there's some talk. My former running mate likes to talk about solving it in a day. The only way you'd solve this war in a day is if you give Vladimir Putin what he wanted. What's the downside of this argument? There should be some sessions on both sides. And I still need to see evidence, by the way, that Vladimir Putin's end goal is to take Kiev. Because I have yet to still, to this day, see any evidence of that. Pence, who has previously criticized Trump for praising Putin, warned that the Russian leader would likely move into neighboring countries if he was able to overtake Ukraine, pointing to Lithuania, Estonia, or Latvia. And those will be countries where we'd have to send our armed forces to go and fight under our NATO treaty, Pence says. And so I think it's in the interest of our country to give them what they need to stop them there. Repel them there, and make no mistake about it, it's the most effective way to send a message to China that America and the West will not tolerate military aggression by Russia or China to redraw international lines by force. Well, you might want to check in to see what the Taiwan Accords are, because if China wants to go take Taiwan, we are contractually obligated not to put our hands into it, because we can't recognize Taiwan's sovereignty. Yeah, there you go, Grant. Mike Pence can go fight. Look, I came up with something on this. Let me see if I can find it from my own Twitter here, because this one actually got some traction. I know that I don't pay the $8, so I don't get a lot of traction on Twitter anymore. And which I've thought about, by the way, paying the $8 just to get some of this. Let me see if I can find this. I know there's a lot of stuff of people arguing about the Trump indictment, because it was a slow news weekend, so we didn't have anything else to fight about. I don't know if I can find it anymore. No, I think I did it on Saturday. Huh. I was a lot more active on Twitter than I thought I was over the weekend. Ah, there it is. There it is! Alright, let's bring this over here. So before we let Zelensky in and talk about this, David Weissman had put out the tweet, "I'd really like to know why MAGA Republicans have a problem with Ukraine wanting to join NATO." ZNO replies back and says, "Why do leftists want to get thrown into World War III?" Which I don't necessarily think that the Ukraine getting into NATO is a direct path into World War III, but I think that it raises the risk. I'm really curious to know how leftists can't piece this together. And Kerry Mosser, who's got the Ukrainian flag in his bio, says, "It's happening! Solve the Russia war in Ukraine! Go!" I guess this didn't get as much traction as I thought it did, but my reaction to this was, see Donetsk and Luhansk, the Donbass region, stop the attempts to retake Crimea, and let Zaporizhzhia remain under the care of Kiev. If Russia attempts to move beyond this territory, the Donbass region, they accept a nuke directly into Moscow. Zelensky is hung for war crimes. And lastly, in all documentation pertaining to this conflict from all players, Russia, Ukraine, and the US, is immediately completely declassified. That is how you solve that in 24 hours. Kiev gets to keep Zaporizhzhia. Russia gets to keep the Donbass, which, again, my look at what happened here, from the way that I can tell looking at this from the outside, is that this entire thing was Donbass petition Russia to help them move away from Ukraine. And if they move anywhere past the Donbass, put a fucking nuke in the middle of Moscow. Anywhere. If they threw a boot across the Dnipro River, nuke into Moscow. And hang Zelensky. The declassification of all the documents, that would make sure, number one, that we wouldn't go through this again, and number two, that would probably eliminate the ability for any Democrat to be elected for like 20 years. But that's how I would end that. Alright. Let's see what Mr. Zelensky has to say about this. Zelensky responds to Trump, saying he could end the war in a day. He's already had these 24 hours. From Daily Wire News. What do you mean he's had these 24 hours? He's not the president. Let's see. Hold on, we've got some things here. Pence can go fight. Mr. Scott says they extend lines of credit at 20 plus and offer me 0.1%. Yep. I'll even buy him a gun and armor. Mr. Scott says Pence is a sellout. He had the chance to save America from rigged elections and he shrunk like a penis in the snow. Just given the fact that YouTube will go back and change their terms of service on a dime and retroactively ban videos for it, I am not going to go into that. But you're right, he is Chooch status. Mr. Ryan is here. DM Ryan. Grant says, we round up everyone with Ukraine flags in the bio and send them to Ukraine. Problem solved. DM Ryan says, when in the fray, do as the Fraymons do. Mr. Scott says, I support a No More Secrets campaign. And he decided to make a Twitter. Well, enjoy. At JEdgar102, by the way. Grant says, Zelensky just needs to shill for his sugar daddy, Biden and the establishment. Well, we'll see what he has to say. I don't know why I'm going through a live chat like this right now, because we're supposed to be doing this at the end of the show. That's supposed to be our end segment, but we're keeping up with you guys today. Good crowd, too, by the way. Thank you, guys. 15 across both platforms. Is there anybody? Are we doing anything on Kick? Prepare to hear my voice. No, nothing on Kick. Alright. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky pushed back on former President Trump's claims that he could end Russia's war in Ukraine in 24 hours, saying the former president already had 24 hours to do so. Zelensky's remarks, which he made before, were in reference to when Trump was in office and Russia was occupying Crimea and parts of eastern Ukraine. Yeah, but that occupation was carried out. I don't know if it was legal or not, but it was carried out under the Obama admin. In an interview with Martha Raddatz, Zelensky said that his position 16 months ago into the war has remained unchanged. He will not cede any territory to the Russians, and that's the problem. ABC News played a clip of Trump saying on the campaign trail, "If I'm president, I'll have that war settled in one day, 24 hours. Zelensky responded, "It seems to me a sole desire to bring war to end is beautiful. But this desire should be based on real-life experience. Well, it looks as if Trump had 24 hours once in time. We are at war, not full-scale war." You were not at war, by the way. "But we were at war, and as I assume, he had that time at his disposal, so he must have had other priorities. If we are talking about ending war at cost of Ukraine, in other words, to make us give up territory, I think in this way Biden could have brought to end even in 5 minutes, but we would not agree." See this right here, and we're going to listen to this in just a second. This is why I added at the end of it that Zelensky needs to be hung for war crimes. Because there are zero concessions that he wants to make. And again, I look at this and I still think that the Donbass region had petitioned Russia to help them declare independence from Kiev. Because with the exception of one failed incursion, there has been no effort across the Dnipro River. Zelensky criticized other U.S. officials for signaling the U.S. should cut funding for the war in Ukraine, calling it dangerous. "It is important for us to preserve bipartisan support of Ukraine. We understand there is some dangerous signals coming from particular actual politicians in the U.S. regarding reduce of assistance for Ukraine, or there might be some alternative vision. This is dangerous for us." So let's listen.
For future support from Americans, Zelensky is watching the U.S. elections closely, but says the choice is up to the American people.
If I'm president, I will have that war settled in one day, 24 hours.
Donald Trump says he would end the war in 24 hours if he was elected president.
It seems to me that their sole desire to bring the war to an end is beautiful, but this desire should be based on some real-life experience. Well, it looks as if Donald Trump had already these 24 hours once in his time. We were at war, not a full-scale war, but we were at war, and as I assume, he had that time at his disposal. But he must have had some other priorities. If we are talking about ending the war at the cost of Ukraine, in other words, to make us give up our territories, well, I think in this way Biden could have brought it to an end even in 5 minutes. But we would not agree.
What would you say to those Americans who say, we've given enough, we have our own problems, we can't continue to do that?
I would like to say thank you to all Americans for what you have done. And I appreciate those who say that you've done enough. Trust me, no matter what, I appreciate help. When it comes to the word enough, well, we Ukrainians are not people known for excessive appetites. Our victory is enough for us. Honestly, When we have enough for our victory, then it will be enough.
So there you go, liberals. Keep opening up your pocketbook and sending it over there. Let's see. Mr. Scott got pretty tipsy last night after his booster landed for the 16th time, trolling the Elon Altbots. Grant says, if Trump gets it, no more money for Zelensky. Boy, I don't see any downside of that argument. Mr. Scott also started trolling Elon's main account. Excuse me. Grant says this gives away that Zelensky also wants to take back Crimea, which isn't a possibility for the Ukraine. That's correct. Ukraine wasn't at war during Trump. No, we were at war, just not full-scale war. It's one of the little bitches that he put in there in the midst of it. Mr. Scott says, yes, it was, technically. Grant says Crimea happened under Obama, wasn't an open conflict during Trump. Yeah, it was considered ceded at the time. MH17 is MH370. 370 got flown into Christmas Island. Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 happened during Obama. Yes, that's correct. Refueled and flown down to Tel Aviv, where it sat until it started stinking. DM Ryan says, why do we care again? Because Ukraine is our strength. It was flown to Amsterdam to cover its origin, then flown to Ukraine as MH17 and blown out of the sky with the bloated and putrefied bodies obvious by the pics. Interesting. Alright. But, by the way, Zelensky thanks you all for all your tax dollars. Once again, we need to come to a point where there's going to be a session from both sides. Because unless the army of Kiev is planning to take their fight all the way down into the Kremlin, this does not end without a cessation on their side. Or without them winding up in the glowing waste heap of what the rest of the world is going to be if Russia launches that nuke. So, that is where they are at for that. Let's talk about NATO. From NPC News, big question hangs over NATO summit. Will Zelensky show up? From Yulia Talmazan and Alexander Smith. The big question hanging over the high-profile NATO summit this week is whether Volodymyr Zelensky will even show up. The answer could either prove a galvanizing moment for the West in its support of Kiev against Russia or humiliation. Though invited, Zelensky has yet to confirm his attendance, with his officials saying he's not yet clear about what is being promised at the summit. Zelensky's last-minute decision shines a spotlight on the divisions between Kiev and its foreign backers as the war passes its 500th day. No, it doesn't. What it shines a spotlight on is, you give me more, otherwise I do not come to your little party. All the money in Europe come to us, all the money in US, until we take down sworn enemy Moscow. And again, I go back to, if you want to see this ended in 24 hours, on the list of things that have to be done, is you have to hang this man for war crimes. Yeah, I can't read that one, Grant. Grant says, if anyone has an obligation to contribute, it's the lazy Euros. At this point, I feel like if everyone else owes us a tribute, and if Russia launches a nuke, Zelensky will just sniff it up his perfectly proportioned nose that has nothing to do with the nation of Israel. The central disagreement, whether to invite Ukraine to join NATO, and if so, when and how. The two-day summit opens Tuesday in Lithuania, a former Soviet republic that today is one of the most outspoken critics of Russia's war in Ukraine. President Brandon, who stopped in London on Monday en route to Vilnius, the Lithuanian capital, has said he doesn't think Ukraine is ready for full NATO membership. Biden told CNN's Fareed Zakaria that the discussion around Ukraine imminently joining NATO was premature. But he said the U.S. and its allies in NATO would continue to provide Kiev with weaponry and support to end the war. I don't think there's unanimity in NATO about whether or not to bring Ukraine into the NATO family now, at this moment in the middle of a war. Ukraine's joining NATO as the war rages in the eyes of the U.S. and other allies such as Germany would risk a full-blown conflict with nuclear-armed Russia. Exactly! As National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said at a briefing on Friday, Biden has been clear that we are going to support Ukraine for as long as it takes, but we're not seeking to start World War III. NATO's central pillar, Article 5, the all for one and one for all clause that suggests allies, and namely the colossal U.S. military, will come to the aid of any fellow member that is attacked, which is, by the way, exactly why you can't bring the Ukraine into NATO in the midst of the fold of this, because you immediately have to come back out by Article 5 and deploy U.S. troops onto the ground in the Ukraine. And then there will be a nice glowing tipped missile aimed at Munich, at London. I used to know all my national capitals, by the way. At Madrid, at Paris, and at DC, which... yeah, I probably can't say that on YouTube. We're just going to leave that where that is. As such, it's unlikely that any concrete commitments from this front will emerge from the Vilnius event, but Ukraine is nevertheless looking for verbal guarantees that extend beyond what it sees as the timid and vague assurances offered so far. Zelensky's office did not immediately respond to NBC News' request for comment on whether Zelensky would attend. It's been very clear that Ukraine wants some enhanced statement rather than just a reaffirmation of the open door policy, said Neil Melvin, Director of the International Security Studies at the Royal United Services Institute, a London think tank. But I think that the time frame will remain open and tied very much to when the war ends. For Ukraine, this is not just about its own safety, but also providing a bulwark against Russia, trying to invade other countries further into Europe. Zelensky has been adamant since the early days of the war that Ukraine needs to join NATO for any long-term peace agreement to hold not only within the Ukraine but beyond its borders. And again, I go back to what I suggested on Saturday. If you cede the Donbass region and stop trying to retake Crimea, you put the agreement in place that if Moscow moves beyond the Dnipro River, we land a nuclear weapon in the middle of Moscow and we hang Zelensky. I don't think most people in both NATO and I don't think most people in the world would have any problem pulling the Ukraine into NATO. The war would be over. The people who don't want to be in Ukraine anymore. Oh, and by the way, offer safe passage for all the citizens of the Donbass who don't want to live under Russian rule. Let the Russian sympathizers stay. Let anybody, all the way, also let anybody from the west side of the Donbass freely immigrate for, let's say, up to a year. We'll have unification in the Ukraine, in Kiev. And then, yeah, I don't think anybody in the world would have a problem bringing what's left of the Ukraine into NATO. Certainly would keep Russia from, he's going to go back and he's going to take the rest of it now, if we give him what he wants. So, that is what they have for that. Mr. Scott says, I'll admit to a bit of an anti-Semitic streak there for a bit, but I realized it was because I was scared. I just joke about it. I'm like one of the most pro-Semitic people out there. Anytime I run across a lady who is not exactly my type, but I still can't get enough of her, it always turns out that she's Jewish, at least ethnically. Probably not practicing. Usually not practicing, but definitely ethnically. I don't know what it is. I swear I don't try for it. From the Daily Wire, Biden says Ukraine not ready for NATO. They need democratization first. From Ryan Saavedra. President Brandon said in an interview broadcast on Sunday that he believes the Ukraine is not ready to become a member of NATO, and the country first needs to focus on ending the war in Russia. The remarks were made during a discussion with Fareed Zakaria as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky continues to push for becoming a member state. I don't think it's ready for membership in NATO, Biden said, adding that Vladimir Putin believed that he could break NATO with his invasion of Ukraine. Well, he's not wrong. Because the biggest dividing line in NATO right now is whether or not to admit the Ukraine. I don't think there's any unanimity in NATO about whether or not to bring Ukraine into the NATO family at this moment in the middle of a war. If the war is going on, then we're all in the war. You know, we're at war with Russia, man. I remember being in the Cold War, and the red sun of the bed, man. Those were the times, man. Yeah, put your head down under your desk, and they might throw the nuke at us, man. Anytime. You know, we're at war with Russia if that were the case. So I think we have to lay out a path for the rational path for Russia, for Ukraine to be qualified to get into NATO, man. Biden said he told Zelensky that while the process is being worked out, which he said would take a long time, the U.S. would give Ukraine the weapons it needs to defend itself. Let's listen.
Mr. President, an honor to have you on the program.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
When you go to the NATO summit, the big strategic issue is that Ukraine wants membership in NATO. Should it get membership in NATO?
I don't think it's ready for membership in NATO, but here's the deal. I spent, as you know, a great deal of time trying to hold NATO together because I believe Putin has had an overwhelming objective from the time he launched 185,000 troops into Ukraine. And that was to break NATO. He was confident, in my view, and many of the intelligence community, he was confident he could break NATO. So holding NATO together is really critical. I don't think there is unanimity in NATO about whether or not to bring Ukraine into the NATO family now, at this moment, in the middle of a war. For example, if you did that, then, you know, I mean what I say, we're determined to commit every inch of territory that is NATO territory. It's a commitment that we've all made no matter what. If the war is going on, then we're all in a war. You know, we're in war with Russia, if that were the case. So I think we have to lay out a path, for the rational path, for Ukraine to be able to qualify to get into NATO. And we have, when the very first time I met with Putin 2 years ago in Geneva, and he said, I want commitments on no Ukraine in NATO. I said, we're not going to do that because it's an open door policy. We're not going to shut anybody out. NATO is a process that takes some time to meet all the qualifications, and from democratization to a whole range of other issues. So in the meantime, though, I've spoken with Zelensky at length about this. And one of the things I indicated is the United States would be ready to provide, while the process was going on, and it's going to take a while that process was going on, to provide security a la the security we provide for Israel, providing the weaponry, the capacity to defend themselves if there is an agreement, if there is a ceasefire, if there is a peace agreement. And so I think we can work it out, but I think it's premature to call for a vote, you know, in now, because there's other qualifications that need to be met, including democratization and some of those issues.
Which is interesting because he said if there's a ceasefire, if we can find somewhere in the middle, a compromise of some sort, and Zelensky says, no compromise. All Ruskies out of country. I will throw all soldiers that I have and NATO provides to me at Ruskies until all Ruskies out of country. Scrap one, this is an analysis, aka an op-ed, from CNN's Zachary B. Wolf. It's not so easy for Biden to evolve on Ukraine joining NATO. Biden's support for Ukraine has evolved in key ways to give Ukraine ever more deadly firepower for its defense. But he has remained opposed to fast-tracking what some allies say is the ultimate protection in inviting Ukraine into NATO. The singular position, meant to avoid dragging the U.S. into the war with Russia, has remained even as others have slowly fallen. After opposing NATO members supplying Ukraine with F-16s, the U.S. has recently relented to international pressure from Europe, although it still will not supply Ukraine with its own. The U.S. changed course on to provide access to the Patriot missile defense system and modern Abrams tanks, speeding up the deployment process earlier this year. Long-range missile systems. After refusing first to supply longer-range missile systems, the U.S. has pledged to provide ground-launched small-diameter bombs, known as GLSDBs, that could give the Ukraine's military the range to strike within Russia. The U.S. could even go further if it decides to give Ukraine access to different longer-range missile systems known as ATACMs, as other NATO allies like the UK will have done with their Storm Shadow missile system, and cluster bombs, which we'll be talking about later. However, on NATO, but another important front, Biden has not yet evolved. He's not ready to invite the Ukraine into NATO as soon as possible. Some other smaller NATO members have responded to the public relations campaign by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky that Ukraine should get that ultimate protection. The first NATO priority, Biden told CNN's Fareed Zakaria in an interview that aired on Sunday, is keeping the current configuration of NATO countries together and united. I don't think there's unanimity in NATO about whether to bring Ukraine into the NATO family. Referring to Article 5 of NATO's charter, by which all countries pledge to defend other members, Biden said, if the war is going on, then we're all in a war, you know. We're in a war with Russia if that were the case. Which, again, is the reason that we're not doing this right now. It has nothing to do with humanitarian or anything else like that. It is the fact of the matter, and the U.S. is going to be the one that decides on NATO. And then by doing so, they pledge 15 other countries into a war that some of them may not be ready to go into. I'll give credit where credit is due. Biden is absolutely right on this. He's wrong on everything else in this conflict, but he's absolutely right on this. Well, we'll see. Let's talk about the cluster bombs and the clusterfuck that this came to. Reading from the Daily Wire, Democrats expressed reservations about Biden's decision to send cluster bombs to Ukraine. That's because it was an incredibly boneheaded idea. I don't even know why the hell we still have them, honestly. From Ben Whitehead. 2 congressional Democrats expressed reservations on the recent decision from the Biden admin to send cluster bombs to the Ukraine amid its ongoing conflict with Russia. Barbara Lee criticized the move on State of the Union. What did I say that was going to be? We're going to change the name of that one too. State of Disunion. Barbara Lee criticized the move on CNN's State of Disunion on Sunday, saying the weapons should never be used. Similarly, Tim Kaine of Virginia told Fox News' Shannon Bream that he has real qualms about the decision which Biden said was very difficult for him to make. Once you see what takes place, we'll read from listen from Barbara Lee. Lee telling Tapper on this. And then Tim Kaine on Fox. Let's listen.
So here's how the White House is trying to justify giving Ukraine cluster munitions despite the risk that they pose to civilians. Take a listen.
There is also a massive risk of civilian harm if Russian troops and tanks roll over Ukrainian positions and take more Ukrainian territory and subjugate more Ukrainian civilians because Ukraine does not have enough artillery. That is intolerable to us. This is their country they're defending. These are their citizens they're protecting. And they are motivated to use any weapon system they have.
What do you think? Do you buy that argument? What's your response?
Nice being with you, Jake. No, cluster bombs should never be used. That's crossing a line. Once you see what takes place, we know what takes place in terms of cluster bombs being very dangerous to civilians. They don't always immediately explode. Children can step on them. That's a line we should not cross. I think the president's been doing a good job managing this war, this Putin aggressive war against Ukraine, but I think that this should not happen. He had to ask for a waiver under the Foreign Assistance Act just to do it, because we have been preventing the use of cluster bombs since, I believe, 2010.
So when Putin started using cluster bombs, the Biden White House said that would potentially be a war crime. Do you think
it is
that, therefore, the U.S. government, the Biden administration, will potentially be engaging in war crimes if this goes forward?
Yes.
What I think is that we would risk losing our moral leadership, because when you look at the fact that over 120 countries have signed the convention on cluster munitions, saying they should never be used, they should never be used. And in fact, many of us have urged the administration to sign on to this convention. And so I'm hoping that the administration would reconsider this, because these are very dangerous bombs, they're dangerous weapons, and this is a line that I don't believe we should cross.
All right, Barbara Lee on Jake Tapper. Holding the position, by the way, that that they held putting cluster bombs into Iraq. Now we have Tim Kaine on Shannon Bream's Fox News Sunday.
All right, now we talk to the other side of the aisle, Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. Welcome back to Fox News Sunday, Senator.
Great to be with you, Shannon. Thanks.
Okay, I want to start in the same place we did with Senator Barrasso with Secretary Yellen. She's coming back. And listen, while she was in China and there to ease tensions, they fired up aircraft and warships in the Taiwan Strait. This comes on the visit by Secretary Blinken that a lot of people think there haven't been any deliverables from these other than us getting lectured by the Chinese Communist government. Here's what former Secretary Mike Pompeo said a couple days ago.
They'll continue to steal our stuff, our intellectual property, and they'll continue to conduct espionage operations like the balloon all across America. These are things that I think the administration should take much more seriously, and sending emissaries to bow down to the Chinese Communist Party in the way that it appears that we are to gain almost nothing seems like a big foreign policy mistake.
All right, skeptics say China is lecturing us privately. They're embarrassing us publicly. We aren't getting anything from these meetings. Our latest Fox News poll shows that 57% of Americans disapprove of how this president is handling foreign policy. What are we getting from this relationship with China? How would you manage it differently if you would?
Well, Shannon, you know, I'm not sure we're getting a lot, but you have to communicate. The two most powerful nations in the world have to communicate to avoid unnecessary escalation and risk. Nobody in the United States wants to see an unnecessary military skirmish with China, and that's why communication is so important. Communication doesn't guarantee a positive outcome, but the absence...
You know, they're not going to talk about that till later, but... Yeah, and again, just going back to the Lee clip, this is a situation where people like Tim Kaine and Barbara Lee were both adamant that using cluster bombs was a war crime in Iraq. And yeah, it's a war crime when Russia does it. And a lot of this, like, it's the whole two wrongs don't make a right thing. It goes the same way when I criticize DeSantis babies and Trump babies for fighting with each other, saying, oh, well, the other side started it. Oh, these people, they do it just as bad, and Trump was the one that started the insults. Yeah, that doesn't make it right, and you still want these people to come out and vote for your preferred candidate on Election Day, which they're not going to do if you keep calling them either rhino elitist or toothless hicks. If you commit a war crime in response to Russia's war crime, you're still committing a war crime. A little bit more coming to us from the BBC. Cluster bombs. Unease grows over U.S. sending cluster bombs to Ukraine. From Catherine Armstrong and Antoinette Radford. Several allies of the U.S. have expressed unease at Washington's decision to supply Ukraine with cluster bombs. Correct, because it's a bonehead idea. On Friday, the U.S. confirmed it was sending the controversial weapon to Ukraine, with Biden calling it a very difficult decision. In response, the UK, Canada, and New Zealand and Spain all said that they were opposed to the use of the weapons. Mr. Biden told CNN in an interview Friday that he had spoken to allies about the decision, which is part of a military aid package worth $800 million or 626 million pounds. The president said it had taken him a while to be convinced to do it, but he had acted because the Ukrainians are running out of ammunition. The decision was quickly criticized by human rights groups, with Amnesty International saying cluster munitions pose a grave threat to civilian lives even long after the conflict has ended. This is, by the way, the same situation where our paid shills are coming and telling us, oh, we're respected around the world now. Well, probably not anymore. When asked about his position on the U.S. decision, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak highlighted the U.S. was one of 123 countries, or UK rather, was one of 123 countries that had signed up to the Convention on Cluster Munitions, which prohibits the production or use of the weapons and discourages their use. So, our allies are against it. Politico, game changer or war crime, DC divided on cluster bombs. From Kelly Garrity. Biden's decision to include cluster bombs has drawn disparate reactions from members of Congress, with some Democrats breaking from Biden. Barbara Lee, notable, we talked about earlier. Lee isn't alone. Several top Democrats have spoken out against the decision. The Biden end himself has expressed different views on whether the weapons constitute a violation of international law. Red-haired bobblehead previously said Russia's use of such weapons could potentially constitute a war crime. Speaking on ABC's This Week, National Security spokesman John Kirby said the Ukrainians are still far less likely to kill civilians than the Russians. I think we can all agree that more civilians have been and will continue to be killed by Russian forces with whether it's cluster munitions, drones, missile attacks, or just frontal assaults that will likely be hurt by the use of these cluster munitions fired at Russian positions inside Ukrainian territory. Chris Coons came to Biden's defense. This was a very hard decision. The president he listened to all sides. Coons said during an interview on CBS's Face the Nation, adding Ukrainians are at risk of losing this counteroffensive if they run out of their shells. And even some Republicans have applauded this. John Barrasso of Wyoming, notably. This should have happened long ago. Russia's been using these for a long time. Micah McCall, House Foreign Affairs Chair of Texas, echoed the remarks on State of the Union. All that the Ukrainians and Zelensky are asking for is to give them the same weapons that Russians have to use in their own country against Russians who are in their own country, McCall said. Top House Republican backs Biden's decision, from Shauna Mazzell over at CNN. Michael McCall, a Texas Republican, and Barbara Lee made their remarks in separate interviews with Jake Tapper on State of the Union. McCall said the weapons would be a game changer in the war in Ukraine, noting that Russia is dropping with impunity cluster bombs on Ukrainian territory. All the Ukrainians are asking is to give them the same weapons the Russians have to use in their own country against Russians who are now in their country, he said. They do not want these to be used in Russia. Bullshit. And RFK getting in on this. Before, we've got one last one from NPC talking about Biden trying to defend his position. RFK Jr. blasts Biden for sending cluster bombs to Ukraine. White House previously said the use of controversial munitions would be a war crime. From Paul Saka. Uh-oh. What do we have going on here? You seen Afro Man's Fix My Gate music video? No. I sent the MMJ policy czar, some diversity hire woman, a slew of emails giving her a piece of my mind. Yeah, when you send letters to the government, that usually is not. She blocked me and then sent the FBI after me. He started harassing me and even called my brother. Eventually I talked to him and he said never to talk to her again. She blocked me and asked if I hate America. That sounds about like a Democrat. The Biden admin announced on Friday the latest weapons package to Ukraine, said to be worth $800 million, would include cluster bombs. We know what cluster bombs are. We spent an entire episode talking about them yesterday. Where is our RFK? Under Secretary of Defense for Policy, Dr. Colin Kahl defended sending the munitions at a Pentagon briefing. First, Russia's been using them indiscriminately since the start of the war to attack Ukraine. By contrast, Ukraine is seeking DPICM rounds in order to defend its own sovereign territory. Second, Russia's been using the munitions since the start of the war to attack Ukraine. Russia's been using cluster munitions with high dud or failure rates between 30 and 40%. In this environment, Ukraine has been requesting cluster munitions in order to defend its own sovereign territory. The munitions we provide have a dud rate not higher than 2.5%. Where's RFK? There we go. Democrat presidential candidate RFK blasted Biden for sending the bombs to Ukraine. Oh look, the cluster bombs are munitions so horrific for civilians that more than 100 nations have signed an international treaty banning them. Now the Biden admin is prepping to send them to Ukraine. These munitions scatter bomblets across the landscape. Many fail to explode. Until children pick them up later, they have caused thousands of injuries and deaths to civilians. In February 2021, President Biden promised us diplomacy is back. But now the White House rejects talks to end the war in Ukraine, plus sends cluster bombs instead. It would be nice to see our president put as much energy into talks as he does to sending weapons. Cluster bombs are supposed to be used as a weapon of last resort. But we're told that Russia is divided and Ukraine is winning the war. Why not use the opportunity to propose a favorable peace? Which is a very, very, very interesting take on this. Yes, if you do have to use them, it should be as a last resort. But Ukraine is supposedly winning. Mogwai says, I have more faith in Ted Kennedy driving me home than anything RFK says. Oof. Yeah, Ted Kennedy. Mediocre senator, bad date. But Biden, of course, has to defend his position. From NPC News, Biden defends difficult decision to give Ukraine cluster bombs amid congressional pushback. From Dore Gregorian. President Biden defended what he called his very difficult decision to provide cluster munitions to Ukraine in an interview that aired on Sunday. It took me a while to be convinced to do it, but the main thing is they either have the weapons to stop Russia now or keep them from stopping Ukrainian offensive through these areas, or they don't. And I think they needed them, Biden said on an interview with Fareed Zakaria. Again, that doesn't make it right. And you potentially have a lot of lives on your hands at this point for doing this. Possibly civilian. So that is our Ukrainian catch-up. We haven't talked about Ukraine for a long time. But it's nice to see that some Democrats hold on to their anti-war position amid the fact that it's not popular among their party right now. I thought they were all going to turn into neocon Republicans, but it does. I'm very happy to see some of the pushback from this. All right, let's talk Larry Nassar from CNN. Larry Nassar, the ex-USA gymnastics doctor who sexually abused girls for decades, was stabbed 10 times in prison. Oh, lame. Huh. Boo. Oh, that's totally bad. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's terrible. Oh. From Sean Nottingham, Hannah Rabinovitz, and Holly Yan. Former gymnastics doctor Larry Nassar, who was convicted of sexually abusing young athletes under the guise of medical treatment, was assaulted inside a federal prison in Florida, according to two sources familiar with the incident. Joe Rojas, president of the local correction officers union, told CNN that Nassar was stabbed a total of 10 times, twice in the neck, twice in the back, and 6 in the chest. Rojas credits corrections officers on the scene with saving Nassar's life. What was the hurry? Rojas says Nassar is in stable condition. Nassar has been serving a 60-year sentence for federal child pornography charges. According to a statement from the Bureau of Prisons on Sunday, July 9th, at approximately 2:35 p.m., an inmate was assaulted in the U.S. Penitentiary, Coleman 2 in Sumterville, Florida. Responding staff immediately initiated life-saving measures, staff requested emergency medical services, and life-saving efforts continued. An internal investigation into the incident is underway. The statement says the inmate, who a source familiar confirmed is Nassar, who was transported to a hospital for treatment. Authorities did not release any additional details about the attack. Why did they work so hard to save his life? Seriously. I think karma took hold here, honestly. And I understand, and there's not much more that we can even say about this. I understand what they have to do per penal code, per our constitutional protections against cruel and unusual punishment. But, I mean, come on. They were able to look the other way when Epstein totally 100% killed himself. You couldn't pay off a guard somewhere to make sure that this held? And again, the reason why I'm so cynical about this one, in addition to his federal prison sentence, Nassar was sentenced in a Michigan state court to up to 175 years after more than 150 women and girls said in court he sexually abused them over the past 2 decades. Nassar pleaded guilty to 7 counts of criminal sexual conduct in Ingham County in Michigan and admitted to using his trusted medical position to assault and molest girls under the guise of medical treatment. And you couldn't look the other way for this? A total of 156 women gave impact statements in court describing how they went to Nassar to receive treatment for sports injuries only to be sexually assaulted and told it was a form of treatment. And you couldn't look the other way? Many of the women said when they spoke up about the treatment, they were ignored or their concerns brushed aside by the organizations in power, primarily USA Gymnastics, Michigan State University, where Nassar was the gymnastics team doctor, and the U.S. Olympic Committee. And you couldn't look the other way. Well, I guess he's gonna live for now. Let's talk presidential politics. From ABC 9 KCRG out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Trump criticizes Governor Reynolds for remaining neutral. From KCRG staff. Former President Trump went off on Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds on Monday, criticizing her for her decision to remain neutral in the 2024 Iowa GOP caucus. According to the Des Moines Register, Governor Reynolds has previously pledged not to endorse any candidate ahead of the caucuses. In a Truth Social post, Trump attacked Reynolds for not endorsing his candidacy, saying that he previously endorsed her when she needed him. That's all well and good, by the way, that you previously endorsed her. That was of your own volition. Let's read the Truth Social post. I love Iowa. Protected and expanded ethanol. Got $28 billion from China for our great farmers and ended the estate death tax on farms. Made the best trade deals in history. USMCA, China, and many more. Introduced the world to our farmers and kept Iowa's first in the nation status. I opened up the governor position for Kim Reynolds, and when she fell behind, I endorsed her. Did big rallies, and she won. Now she wants to remain neutral. I don't invite her to events. DeSantis down, 45 points. Trump's criticism follows on a story in which the New York Times, a former newspaper, said the governor is softening ground in Iowa for Mr. DeSantis, appearing to try to create conditions for an opening for him to take on Mr. Trump. Look, I can see where Governor Reynolds is coming from for this. This is going to be contentious, and again, my biggest problem with what the Democrat and Republican parties are doing right now and trying to push this feud as hard as it goes is the fact that if Reynolds comes out and endorses Trump and puts their finger on the scale, there is going to be a slew of DeSantis voters who will not come out and vote for Trump just based on the fact that they look at it and say that it's rigged and they're going to stay home. I think all governors at this point should be staying neutral until at least the primaries are over. I am normally not an advocate for flow with the wind, stay with the wind, but as contentious as this is a unique situation. And in order for us to not live under 4 more years of mumbles and cackles, then these two camps need to figure out how to get along. And I don't know if they can. Because they are counting on each other. They don't know this yet, but they are counting on each other's camps to come out and vote for their candidate, whoever wins the primary. This is probably the smartest thing that Kim Reynolds can do. Politico going on with this. Trump swings at Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds. We'll spend a couple minutes on this. From Kelly Garrity. Former President Trump publicly let loose against Kim Reynolds on a social media post on Monday following the New York Times report that it detailed the Republican governor's close relationship with Ron DeSantis, Trump's closest competitor in the GOP presidential primary. By the way, for her to remain neutral, I think is the best decision, and if she did turn around and endorse DeSantis, given the fact that she's close friends with him, I would actually cry foul on that. If she endorsed Trump, I would cry foul on it too. Reynolds said she won't formally endorse any of the candidates in the Republican primary, keeping in practice with past governors of her state, which holds the first in the nation caucuses. However, the governor has appeared with DeSantis at each of the 3 events that he's hosted in the state, including his first in-person campaign event, where she described her fellow governor as a candidate who has shown us that he can, and all you have to do is look at his record. So she is kind of endorsing him, but not an official endorsement. So, I mean, Kim, you might want to lay off that just a little bit. On the Democrats' side, Biden admin asks appeals court to block order limiting his contact with social media. From Kevin McGill. The Biden admin asked the federal appeals court on Monday to temporarily block the lower court's order limiting executive branch officials' discussions with social media companies about controversial online posts. You people, you can't see this far in front of your faces. The request for an emergency stay was filed with the 5th U.S. District Court of Appeals, shortly after the U.S. District Judge Terry Doughty rejected the admin's motions that he put his own July 4th order on hold. The order came in a lawsuit filed by Republican attorneys general in Louisiana and Missouri, as well as a conservative website owner and 4 individual critics of government COVID-19 policies. The lawsuit claimed the admin, in effect, censored free speech by using threats of regulatory action and or protection while pressuring companies to remove what it deemed misinformation. The Pinko Pox holy jab, legal issues involving President Biden's son Hunter, and election fraud allegations were among the topics spotlighted in the lawsuit. Doughty was nominated to the federal bench by former President Trump. His injunction blocked the Department of Health and Human Services, the FBI, and multiple other agencies and admin officials from meeting with or contacting social media companies for the purpose of encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner the removal, deletion, or suppression or reduction of content containing protected free speech. Mr. Scott, settle down. We get it. There's no free speech in this country, but they try to feign it at least. Admin attorneys said the motion filed at the Fifth Circuit that Doughty's ruling was too broad and vague and had the potential to chill government official speech on important matters, and they said Doughty failed to point to any evidence that the admin had made threats against social media companies to coerce them to take down posts. The district court identified no evidence suggesting that a threat accompanied by any request for the removal of content. Indeed, the order denying the stay, presumably highlighting the ostensibly strongest evidence, referring to a series of public media statements, the admin said. They asked the Fifth Circuit to block Doughty's order while the case is pursued at the appeals court in New Orleans, or at a minimum, grant a 10-day block of the order so the admin could prepare to go to the Supreme Court to seek a longer stay. Yeah, why would it be a bad idea for the executive branch to go back and meet with social media? There's no reason for them to be doing so other than to affect and shape the national conversation. I don't even know why this is a controversial issue. Well, okay, I do know why it's a controversial issue, but on paper, I don't even know why this is a controversial issue. You can't go back and tell people what speech is or is not considered free speech. That's not your purview. Now, let me rephrase that. You can't go back out and tell the private company what it is that you want or don't want on their website, and then run back out and say, oh, they're blocking it on their own volition. It's private company. Private company, they can do what they want. They can have on their platform who they want or what they want. Well, it's pretty obvious when you're showing up at their door saying, hey, block this person. You wouldn't want something to happen to your business, would you? The government, and I miss Ron Helton too, by the way, because Ron Helton would be out here telling us that this was legalized mafia tactics because the government is the biggest mob in the world. And it was Rejected. Judge rejects department's request to pause order limiting Biden admin's contact with social media companies. On a win. From Melissa Quinn. I don't know why the hell that's there, but okay, we'll go back past that. A federal judge on Monday turned down a DOJ request to temporarily pause an order that blocks top Biden admin officials and several agencies from contacting social media companies, rejecting the government's claims that the injunction was too broad and threatened to chill lawful conduct. Terry Doughty, appointed to the bench by Trump, because of course everybody's got to put that in here, reiterated in a 13-page ruling denying the DOJ's request for a stay that Missouri and Louisiana were likely to succeed on the merits of their case against the Biden admin. Though his preliminary injunction involves numerous agencies, it's not as broad as it appears, Doughty wrote. It only prohibits something the defendants have no legal right to do, contacting social media companies for the purpose of urging, encouraging, pressuring, or inducing in any manner the removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content containing the protected free speech posted on social media platforms. Yeah, they are scared. Well, we know why they disable comments. But it is their right to do so. YouTube gives them the option, they take it, we see their cowardice. Yes, you can get an app for all browsers, by the way, including Chrome, but also for Brave and Opera and everything else, to go and see the dislikes again. It's hilarious. Let's grab one from the Daily Wire. More on the Biden front. It's not the president's baby. Whoopi plays defense over Biden ignoring his grandchild. Look. Biden is under no legal obligation to acknowledge his grandchild. That is true. What Whoopi is saying here, and I haven't even listened to the clip, but what she's saying according to the headline is true. It's not his child. I know plenty of grandparents who've disowned their children and grandchildren. But see, the Biden admin has run on family values and how important they are to everybody, and all family members are important to the decisions that he makes, except for the one that's undesirable. So there's no legal obligation. Whoopi is correct in that, but if you're going to run on that platform, you do have a moral obligation to do so. Whoopi, along with her cohorts on The View, rallied to President Biden's defense on Monday, saying it wasn't his fault he didn't acknowledge his 7th grandchild. Let's watch.
Scarring one of his grandchildren's lives by not publicly embracing her. So apparently his son had a baby with a woman. They've fought about it, and he pays for the baby, but he has not embraced the child. So Maureen Dowd is saying it's bad for the child that the president has not acknowledged her. So I kind of think, well, she should be kvetching at the son, whose baby it is. It's not the president's baby. So I don't know what you think, but I'm throwing it out there.
I agree with you completely. It shouldn't have been directed to Joe Biden. It should be directed to Hunter Biden. It's 5 children, not 4, Hunter, because this is not Joe Biden's baby, and I think it's very hard for Joe Biden to be a grandfather to the child if his son is not being a father. He can talk to his child, he can advise Hunter, but look, what is absolutely evident to me is that the right wing and the MAGA world has decided to weaponize Hunter Biden against his dad. Yeah. And everything and anything Hunter does or does not do is going to be weaponized.
And this is Maureen Dowd at the New York Times.
Yeah, she's a very serious person.
Again, no obligation whatsoever. But it is implied with the rhetoric that he uses on the campaign trail. And he should be shamed for it, by the way. Absolutely. And now we've got Dementia Joe to talk about. Biden reportedly fumes and spews, curses at staff in private. No one is safe. From Anders Hagstrom, and we've got one from the Daily Mail too, if they don't go through the quotes, because the Daily Mail has the quotes. President Biden has a short temper and frequently lashes out at staff members with profanity-laden rants if they do not meet his expectations, according to a new Axios report. One official in the admin told the outlet that no one is safe from Biden's wrath. Aides are reportedly known to meet with him in groups of 2 or more to diffuse potential tension. Some of the president's go-to attacks include, "How the fuck do you know this? Don't fucking bullshit me, man!" Aides have framed the outburst as a desire for accuracy and competence, telling the outlet that many see getting shouted at by the president as a rite of passage. Yeah, he is out the door at the end of this term. He's not going to make it to 24. If there's something that's not in the brief, he's going to find it, said Ted Kaufman, Biden's chief of staff, when he was in the Senate. It's not to embarrass people, it's because he wants to get to the right decision. Most people have worked for him, like the fact that he challenges them to get and gets them to be a better person. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment from Fox News Digital. Of course he not. It's not the first time reports from within the Biden circle have undermined his carefully curated Uncle Joe public persona. Biden last showed his darker side when a hot mic caught him calling Fox News White House correspondent Peter Doocy a stupid son of a bitch. Monday's report comes as Biden is facing criticism from conservatives who say his latest gaffe revealed sensitive U.S. military information to global adversaries. This is a war relating to munitions, and they're running out of ammunition, and we're low on it, Biden told Fareed Zakaria. And so I finally did. I took the recommendation from the Defense Department to not permanently, but allow for this transition period while we get more 155 weapons, these shells for the Ukrainian. Joe Biden broadcasting to the world the U.S. is low on 155mm shells, conservative communicator Steve Guest tweeted. Moron, does Biden not care that our adversaries in China are listening? No, he doesn't, by the way. And this is, again, this is a symptomatic thing. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to say that he's doing this because he has dementia. But I'm saying there's a strong correlation to people who have Alzheimer's and dementia and getting frustrated at absolutely nothing and taking it out on the people around them. They can't do what it is that they used to do anymore. They can't remember where they are. And their cognitive functions, and they're aware of the fact their cognitive functions are declining. And it frustrates them. And they lash out. This is common among Alzheimer's patients. And yet people are going to continue to come out and say that, no, he is fine, everything's fine. Shifting gears off the presidency, looking at the Senate, actor Hill Harper enters Michigan's 2024 Senate race. From Kiera Frazier, Hill Harper announced his first ever run for office on Monday, joining a field of Democrats for Michigan's 2024 Senate race. Harper, known for his role in The Good Doctor, joins a field of Democrats vying to replace retiring Senator Debbie Stabenow. Who is not seeking a fifth term. Harper is running to the left of Alyssa Slotkin, a moderate three-term Democrat House member from a swing district who launched her Senate bid in February. Harper, who finalized plans to launch his Senate campaign last week, told the Detroit News that he's running for the Senate because we deserve a better brand of politics than politics as usual. There's a high degree of frustration by a lot of Democrats, not just African American Democrats in Michigan, that for the first time in 57 years, Michigan does not have a black Democrat rep in Congress. And that is going backwards, Harper, who's African American, told the Detroit News. I think that folks want to see real people-powered representation over big donor establishment representation. As of now, only 3 black men currently serve in the Senate: Warnock, Booker, and Scott. In an announcement video released on Monday, Harper addressed his son, Pierce Hill Harper, telling him that he's growing up in an increasingly divisive and dangerous world. Powered by Obama-level politics, by the way. What am I pasting? What screenshot am I pasting? At the core of so much of this are too many politicians in office that don't really care about people, Harper said, and I believe our government should work for the people, be a force for good and protect our freedoms. And that won't happen if we keep electing the same type of people to office. The Iowa native owns a house in Detroit and bought a coffee shop, Roasting Plant Coffee, in the city in 2017, according to the Associated Press. Harper will have to face several other Democrats who jumped into the Senate race, including President Pamela Pugh of the Michigan State Board of Education, former state rep Leslie Love, businessperson Nassar Beydoun, and attorney Zach Burns, plus the aforementioned Alyssa Slotkin. So this will be a contentious one. We'll see what happens. We'll see what the debates look like, and we will see who rises to the top of this one. Speaking of which, Senate rankings, 5 seats most likely to flip from the Hill, from Al Weaver. So let's see what they say. Of the 5, I think some of this is propagandistic, by the way. West Virginia. The top spot in these rankings remains unchanged as Joe Manchin faces a true uphill battle to retain his seat and secure a 3rd full term in the Senate. Republicans have been licking their chops at the possibility of unseating Manchin, and unlike in 2018, they seem to have their best candidate in place to do just that in West Virginia. Jim Justice, an East Carolina University survey released on late May, shows Justice leading the incumbent centrist Democrat by more than 20 percentage points. Not that it would matter. Jim Justice is Joe Manchin with an R next to his name, even down to the fact that they have the same story coming in. Jim Justice, popular centrist governor with a Republican after his name of West Virginia, who's now running for a Senate seat, just like Manchin was, except as a Democrat. Alex Mooney should be the one that's going in there, but, well, there's a machine politic in place. But as right as West Virginia has become, I'm pretty sure this one flips. Montana. Tim Sheehy, a retired Navy SEAL turned businessman, threw his hat into the ring and gave Republicans their best hope to defeat John Tester. I definitely think this one's changing. I don't know how John Tester ever got in Montana, by the way. But there's been a ground surge of conservative Californians, Oregonians, and Washingtonians heading for both Idaho and Montana. And I think Tester's days are numbered. I think they're right on this one. Ohio. Another one that's getting redder and redder. Sherrod Brown. I don't think Sherrod Brown is as blow out of the water as others are, but I do think Sherrod Brown has an uphill battle for this one. Definitely. I think that one's closer to 50-50. The states on this list, perhaps no race has changed less than the battle in Arizona, as Ruben Gallego remains top choice of Democrats. Carrie Lake is the likely option for Republicans. Don't do that. That would be a stupid move. Though she has yet to announce a bid, and Kyrsten Sinema has yet to tip her hand and say whether she'll seek re-election next year as an independent. If Republicans put up literally anybody but Carrie Lake, Kyrsten Sinema's done. As far as Gallego goes, I think that he would win as well, but I don't think it's as certain. But the problem is that the Arizona GOP is going to put up Kari Lake for whatever reason. The hard part is I don't know if Sinema can hold on to her seat as an independent because of all the big money from the two parties going in there. I would actually like to see Sinema hold her seat unless the GOP puts up somebody who actually is rock-ribbed and keeping the government out of people's lives. And at that point, I will default to that person. But not Kari Lake. And my home state, Wisconsin. Finally, Wisconsin is the lone new entrant on the list as Tammy Baldwin tries to secure a third term. And Republicans try to figure out who will be their best candidate to deny her 6 more years. I have, by the way, debated running for this race again. In 2018, I filed my paperwork to run for this race. I got the required signatures, and my girlfriend broke up with me. And I had no idea where I was going to be living come election time in 2018. And ever since then, I have debated doing this again. The problem is, especially being in a new area, I don't know if I can secure the signatures required to do so, to get up there and challenge her, but I would love to see Tammy Baldwin lose her seat. And I think I could do it. Running as a by-the-people candidate. Just like the other Democrat incumbents mentioned above, Baldwin has proven to be a real challenge for Republicans in each of her Senate bids. After defeating former Wisconsin Governor Tommy Thompson to win her seat in 2012, which blew my mind that happened, she followed up with an impressive double-digit win in 2018. See, in 2012, that was when Walker was at his peak. That's why it blows my mind so much that she was able to pull that one off. Giving Democrats another battle-tested member to lean on what could have been a tough cycle. Well, she was running against Clayfish, too, so that was an easy race for her. What makes Baldwin incredibly hard to beat is that she puts up the work and she's got 15 winning campaigns to show for it, said Joshua Karp, a Democratic operative who advised Mandela Barnes' campaign last year. Well, I don't necessarily think that he's the one who we should be taking the advice from if he advised Mandela Barnes. Mandela Barnes got beat by Ron Johnson, who has no platform whatsoever. It's just, I'm going to do whatever the most popular Republican does. Republicans have been wading through possible options. However, they were dealt a blow in recent weeks as Mike Gallagher announced he would seek re-election in the House and focus his work atop the newly created Select Committee on China, which, by the way, is not a bad position for him to be in. Now they're looking at a pair of self-funders to take Baldwin on. Eric Hovde, a former hedge fund manager who narrowly lost in 2012 Senate primary to Thompson. No, get that name out of your mouth. Is considered the leading figure. No, as he'd be buoyed by a massive war chest and experience running a statewide campaign. One Wisconsin GOP operative noted recently that Hovde has floated spending at least $20 million of his own money. The second self-funder looking to run is businessman Scott Mayer, who will likely make the decision to post Labor Day. The downside, he has nearly zero name ID of the state. Ron Johnson recently acknowledged that he doesn't know Mayer very well either. I know who he is, but that's about it. Tom Tiffany is also considered an option. Oh yeah, that's right, I gotta get rid of that yet. Though he'd have to give up his ruby red seat to jump in the race. Yeah, but anybody else that we put in there is probably going to win. Tom Tiffany lives and represents one of the reddest counties in the state, And that actually wouldn't be the worst idea. I could get on board with Tom Tiffany being the senator in this state. He's at least got a position. Not just, I'm going to do whatever the most popular branch of the Republican Party does. What will be the key to Republicans ousting Baldwin, though, will be external forces. What will Biden's standing be in the state next year? And will the GOP nominate Trump, DeSantis, or someone else next year? Those are questions that will weigh heavily on the Senate race. I don't know if I could run for Senate as the GOP because I've already come out and said that I won't endorse either Republican in this race for the presidency. And Hovde is going to jump on the hook and ladder of whoever gets to the top of the nomination. And I believe Scott Mayer will as well. Tom Tiffany will make an endorsement based on his own merit. But there are your 5 seats most likely to flip. Some news on the affirmative action front. We're going to keep going here. To boost diversity after the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action in college admissions, UNC will offer free tuition to some in-state students. From John Dorman. UNC Chapel Hill on Friday announced it would offer free tuition to some in-state students as part of their continued effort to boost diversity after the Supreme Court last month struck down the use of affirmative action in college admissions. Kevin Guskowicz, in a statement, said that beginning with the incoming class of fall 2024, undergraduates from North Carolina whose families' incomes are below $80,000 will receive free tuition. We will expand the university's long-standing commitment to access and affordability for North Carolina families. We want to make sure students know their financial constraints and should not stand in the way of their dreams. Guskowicz also said the UNC has hired new outreach officers to tout the tuition policy change and recruit students to attend the flagship institution. We want the best students to know Chapel Hill education is a possibility for them, he continued. Our university's commitment to access, affordability, and supporting a culture of belonging for everyone does not change with last week's ruling. Dude, that is pretty fucking racist to think that you're going to be promoting diversity, and of course it's going to be of skin color, not of thought, by only taking people, by giving free tuition to people with a household income of under 80 grand. And assuming that means that it's going to be black people coming in. That is racist. Guskowicz also reiterated the UNC would fully adhere to the court's ruling. That means race will not be a factor in admissions decisions at the university. It also means we will comply with the court's ruling that an applicant's lived racial experience cannot be credited as race for race's sake, but instead under some circumstances may illuminate an individual's character and contributions. You're treading a line here, dude. The New York Times, a former newspaper, offers a solution for colleges to circumvent SCOTUS affirmative action ruling. From Virginia Kruger over at the Daily Wire. The New York Times, a former newspaper, offered a possible solution on Thursday that would allow colleges to circumvent the Supreme Court's recent ruling regarding affirmative action as the admissions processes. The court ruled against Harvard and UNC last week, stating the colleges could no longer consider race as a factor when reviewing the applications of potential students, so the New York Times offered a possible workaround that's already been adopted by the UC Davis's medical school. The program, like affirmative action, is designed to enforce diversity and appears to operate essentially like Communist China's social credit score, but in reverse. To build a diverse class of students, the medical school at UC Davis ranks applicants by the disadvantages they've faced. The disadvantage scale has helped turn UC Davis into one of the most diverse medical schools in the U.S. Can it work nationally? The New York Times asked in a tweet. Mark Henderson, head of admissions at UC Davis's medical school, said he implemented the program in an effort to get away from a world where most students were able to get into medical school came from wealthy families. Henderson developed what he refers to as socioeconomic disadvantage scale, or SED, and explained that it gave each student a score from 0 to 99 based on their individual backgrounds, financial status, parental education levels, and other personal hardships. That sounds a lot like you're considering a race in the middle of this. But I would actually love to see these colleges get sued again. We'll see. Another story coming back into my state of Wisconsin. From WISN 12, ABC out of Milwaukee. Federal judge rules against Mukwonago School District transgender bathroom policy. From Justin Steffen. A federal judge says the Mukwonago School District can enforce its ban on transgender students using restrooms they prefer. The ruling comes after a mother and her 11-year-old trans daughter filed a civil rights complaint against the Mukwonago Area School District. Her boy that wants to go in the girls' bathroom. According to the complaint, from 3rd grade through 5th grade, her daughter was allowed to use the bathroom she preferred. But that changed this past June during summer school when the district said she'd now use a boys' bathroom or gender-neutral bathroom at the school. The complaint goes on to say the policy is causing her to suffer severe emotional distress and mental health effects, inducing thoughts of self-harm, nightmares, embarrassment, social isolation, and stigma, and lowered self-esteem. The judge decided to issue a temporary restraining order on Thursday, ruling the district cannot enforce the ban or discipline the student for using the bathroom of her choice while the case plays out in federal court. Why? Why are so many parents just giving in to the, if you don't let me do what I want to do, I'm just going to kill myself? That didn't work in the 90s when I was a kid. Why does it work now? What's bollocks about me is the fact that the offer was there, and all these districts, by the way, now have a gender-neutral bathroom that they can send the kids to if there is an issue of discomfort. But it's not enough for them. They have to be able to go in and say, yes, I'm going to go sit down in the girls' bathroom. I have my own privacy. Do you know how much I would have given to have my own private stall when I was in high school? My own private room, concrete walls all around me. When I had to go take a crap, I would have given anything for that when I was in high school and middle school. They had the unisex bathrooms, but they were basically for if you got into an accident or were on crutches or something, or in a wheelchair. But the other side of that is from 3rd grade to 5th grade, the boy allowed to use the bathroom he preferred. You don't know what your gender is in 5th grade other than the fact that it affects how you pee. So this all has markers of parental influence in it. But that's in Mukwonago, which, by the way, is probably one of the more conservative areas outside of Milwaukee. I believe Mukwonago is in Waukesha County, but it might be in Racine still. Let me check that. Mukwonago is in Waukesha County, with a little bit going down into Walworth County. So yes, it's further west than Racine, which again puts you in the counties both with Waukesha, one of the reddest cities in this state, and Lake Geneva, the second reddest city in this state. This is more about proving a point than anything else, but that's what they have for that. Chuck U. Schumer doing something incredibly stupid, but from a New York mindset. Oh no, you can't have the big gulp drink because they're making kids fat. God forbid you enforce some discipline, but you can't have that anymore. Chuck U. Schumer calls for the FDA investigation into high caffeine content of Prime energy drinks. From Samantha Beach and Maria Sole Campinotti. Senate Majority Leader Chuck U. Schumer has called the U.S. Food and Drug Admin to investigate the high caffeine content of Prime energy drinks, which he claims have been targeted to children as one of the summer's hottest beverages for kids. Schumer said the cans of Prime Energy contain more than double the caffeine of a can of Red Bull and 6 times more caffeine than a can of Coke. He warned parents the drink is gaining popularity on social media. The company does not recommend drinks for anyone under the age of 18. According to the information on its website, Schumer claimed marketing for the beverage is tempting to minors. Speaking at a news conference on New York on Sunday, Schumer said, "All this stuff called Prime, at just 12 ounces, Prime has an eye-popping level of caffeine, and that's giving parents and doctors the jitters. For the kids that are the targets, here's the other problem. Most parents haven't even heard of this stuff the kids are begging for. Prime is born from the reels of social media and the enigmatic world of influencers," Schumer said. "Kids see it on their phones as they scroll and they actually have a need for it." Speaking at the same news conference, Dr. Edith R. Bracco Sanchez said high amounts of caffeine can cause children to have headaches, jitters, anxiety, nervousness, and sleeping problems, just like it does for the rest of us. Prime energy caffeine content. Let's just have a look and see what the caffeine content is for this. 200 milligrams. 6 times a can of Coke. Versus it's $39 for a can of Coke, like they said. I happen to have the can of Bang that I drank this morning on my desk right here. This is not an endorsement for Bang. The only reason we're using this is for a comparison of caffeine content, because the only way that I would endorse them is if they were paying me for the endorsement. Let's see. Warning, too much caffeine can cause nervousness, irritability, sleeplessness, and occasionally rapid heartbeat. Not recommended for use by individuals under the age of 18. One serving of Bang provides 300 milligrams of caffeine. So this isn't even the biggest one that's on the market. This can right here that I have in my hand was 300 milligrams of caffeine. That felt really, really good this morning when I slept way in. And as you see, it says right on the can, not recommended for anybody under the age of 18. Which, and realistically, yes, I understand there's a high caffeine content for it. I'm typically highly caffeinated to begin with, but there's also enough of a vitamin blend in there that I actually feel decent when I drink this. Like, there's 2 cans of Monster over there that I used for mixers over the weekend when I was getting hammered, which only have 140 milligrams of caffeine in them, by the way. But I drank those when I went to go get hammered this weekend. If I use those during the day, like in the way that I use Bang, I am just dead by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What's nice about the 300 milligrams of caffeine is with the vitamin blend they put into it, it's sustainable. It lasts me for a while. It doesn't crash me entirely. And yes, we've got the Bang girls out there, the models. And some of them are also titillating to kids between the ages of 13 and 18. But again, can we not parent? Can we not have a parent come out and say, "No, little Jimmy, you can't have the bottle or the can of Prime Energy, because you're not going to sleep tonight if you do." Remember, most kids, at least under the age of 16, can't buy stuff on their own. Especially given the fact that their parents have blocked them from having jobs of their own. So, if these are getting marketed to kids and kids are buying them, there is parental involvement in there somewhere. Alright, let's call it for the news today. We're going to finish out looking at the live chat. See what you guys had to say today. Which I've kept up from the beginning, but a little bit of this took off. So let's start. Well, first we're going to look at the Instagram side. We had Bernie Air Pet, Stella Holmat, Joy Buddy, Sandra Steven, and Caleb Shumate 1776 joined us on the Instagram side today. Thank you for that. Check Kick, but I don't think anybody's going to be there. No chat on Kick. Surprise. Surprise, surprise. Still trying to grow over there. Kick.com/JEdgar101. Go check us out. On the Rumble chat, you guys are busy over here. Mr. Scott's over here with his coronavirus PCR genetic code and the links to that. Boombox says, I followed the science and got nowhere, so I followed the money and found the science. New Hunter movie, total retard, and Democrat voters bend all the time. Dual Helix over here with a YouTube video and some songs, which fortunately we are not going to play on air. Just because, obviously, always, I need time to go back and vet these things. Oops, didn't need most twice. No, I didn't. Numbers just look coast. Sorry you have a hard time with it. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm trying to illustrate my existence so you can empathize. How could I ask you, do you know what it is, unless I talk about the way it is? I'll start posting chicken songs. You can listen to a chicken song. There's a chicken song for us. Something good at least. And my bottle of Jaeger is only 100 milliliters. I'm titrating. It is normal for people to listen to me tell me you're too loud. It's just the way I am. It makes me feel bad when people tell me that. You're good. Makes me feel like my creativity is being stifled. I've literally had my psychologist tell me, you're too loud, man. I'm like, too bad. Suck it up, buttercup. Yeah, don't click those links live. I never do. I'll put some chicken songs up. Dude, I remember when Stephen Ignoramus went on like a month-long kick where this was like his favorite thing in the world. Was this song. And I've always been jealous of Stephen Ignoramus because I think our world would be a better place if more people put a third of the effort into their primary hobby as Stephen Ignoramus put into this song, which he didn't even write. He just liked it that much. Alright, let's look into the main chat for the night. Bring this one over here. Mr. Scott is over on the main chat with a Mogwai telling us it's another Monday. Time to play. Will J. Edgar be muted or not? I was not, by the way. Mr. Scott is doing Jaeger too. I can't do Jaeger. I tried it. I don't know if it's just because I have bad memories of the licorice, drinking it when I was finally way over the edge and about ready to spew, and that's what I associate it with, but every time I drink Jaeger, it makes me sick. I'm back to my old ways. I'm going to spam Rona links on Rumble. Goats and Scarves is here. Loud and clear. Pineapple does not belong on pizza. I love pineapple on pizza, by the way. Mr. Scott likes Hawaiian pizza with cream cheese. I gotta try that when I'm on an off weekend and having pizza. Sean Hannity's head was located in Trump's ass. Grant says Sean Hannity was an NPC. It's obvious how Prigozhin is paying his troops in Bitcoin. We don't know if that's the case, but something to look into. Goats and Scarves says, saw someone wearing a mask while driving alone a few days ago. Mogwai says, a ball gags count as a mask. We'll see Lindsey Graham being safe. I have not seen The Sound of Freedom. I do need to go and look into that. Never even heard of Evernote. I've heard of it, but I've never used it. The Alfalfa Kid. I gotta look that up. Okay, that's actor Rowan Witt. So let's go plug that in. Rowan Witt. Known for The Matrix, Home and Away, Spreadsheet. Let's look at that. No, it does not appear that that was him. Rowan Witt started his acting career in Somewhere in the Darkness in 1999, shortly after going into The Matrix. Let's look and see who Alfalfa was in Little Rascals. We're gonna solve the mystery of this right now. 1994 movie, The Little Rascals. Bug Hall was Alfalfa in that movie, so they are not the same person. Born February 4th, 1985, so that kid's actually almost the same age as I am. I'm a year older than he is. I thought that he would be too old to be the Spoon Kid. Does not give Rowan Witt's age in IMDb. Let me look at something else here. Okay, and he is older than I thought he would be, but still younger than Alfalfa, than Bug Hall was. He is 34. He was born November 5th, 1988. So they are different. They are different people. Thought so. Mr. Scott says, they came at me with psychologically rigged questions. It's an equation that I don't completely understand, but I'll look into more afterwards. I guess it's more rigged by semantics. Have you ever thought about opening a savings account? Yeah, I have, but not one with 0.01% APR. Then I see their faces get sad because they have no commission. Yeah, I have a savings account. I don't get any interest off of it. They extend lines of credit at 20+%, then offer me 0.01%. Thieves. Grant says, I think we should round up all the feminists and send them to Ukraine. Mike Pence can go and fight. He'll even buy him guns and armor. I know we read a lot of this already. Round up everyone with Ukraine flags in the bio and send them to Ukraine. Problem solved. DM Ryan says, when in the fray, do as the Fraymons do. Grant says, if Trump gets in, no more money for Zelensky. This gives away that Zelensky wants to take back Crimea, which isn't a possibility. Yeah. See, we read all this earlier. Let's start from here. I don't generalize anymore, and tribalism is a result of fear, even my own. And me being scared and tribalistic justifies tribalism against me. Not scared anymore, not afraid to call a spade a spade. Mr. Scott is also attracted to Jewish women. I don't intend to do it, I find out after the fact. I try to empathize with the leftist mindset, but I have found that it's active futility. They're so scared that cognitive dissonance controls their emotions. They mostly have no real reason to hate Trump except to feel secure in their tribe. Francis, maybe even Russia can join NATO. Mr. Scott, can you imagine Russia getting into NATO before Ukraine? The whole Ukraine war is just profiteering warmongers selling off old stock. That's my opinion. Yeah, I've said the same thing. Even the diversity hires are questioning this war. DM Ryan subbed to Mr. Scott, talking about alpine strawberries and a hot pepper, the Trinidad scorpion pepper. I have to look where I can get some seeds for that. That I'm going to, and I know I read a little bit of it earlier, but I'm going to avoid this one for now just because of YouTube's algorithms on marijuana. Well, guy says, if there's one thing Biden and Harris know, it's cluster bombs. Oops, sorry, I misheard. Yeah, Mr. Scott says, not all Dems are 65 IQ scaredies. Mr. Scott can write ginger to describe redheads in a racist tone, but God forbid I switch the letters around and say a word that I'm not even going to suggest on YouTube just because it's on YouTube. No, you're good. I'm not worried about you getting me in trouble. It's part of the reason that I don't have the Rumble chat on screen. Because you can get away with a lot of stuff on the Rumble chat. I used to like Whoopi, then when she was on Star Trek. Yeah, I watched recently, for the first time, oddly enough, Sister Act, and she was really good in that movie. And yes, Guinan on Star Trek, of course. After she got on The View, I'm not calling her out on her fear. She's scared, tribalistic. You might as well just sit there and say, we're scared, we're scared. Be scared with us. I don't think Biden's 3 weeks away from a heart attack. I just think that his mind is shutting down. Keep me on the straight and narrow. Oh, don't worry. I'll let you know. Do or do not. There is no try. I guess trying is doing in Yoda mentality. Yeah, you're right. Bug Hall. He does look the same. I will give you that. So let's do an image comparison here. And we'll do it at current time too. Let's do images. Let's do a close-up so we can get some facial features. Images. That is Bug Hall. And that is Rowan Witt. That's Alfalfa. That's the Spoon Kid. I could see it. I could definitely see it. Tell me they don't have a resemblance. No, they do. Grant says, Nassar getting stabbed is literally the Count Dankula clip saying, oh, how terrible, what happened? Yeah, I did say that. 2 Moons over on Instagram. I feel like I should know who that is. Or not Instagram. DLive. I feel like I should know who that is, but I don't remember. It's somebody that has a moderation badge, though, so... I apologize for not remembering you. I wonder if Prime Energy drinks incite Chuck Schumer into an erection. I don't know if it lasts more than 4 hours. Show the kid pics. I'm not going to do the kid pics because we are up on the clock and I'm hungry. My decision making on this channel is affected by how hungry I am. And that is going to be where we land. Oh, it's MK. I was going to say, I know who this person is because he's got the moderator badge. And It is MK Ultra. But I have got a stuffed pork loin, Cajun kale and mozzarella, by the way, sitting in my dish strainer thawing right now. That is about to go in the toaster oven. I got a nice big quick trip salad that I'm going to eat with it because during the week it's keto. During the weekend we have fun and we eat good stuff. But during the week it's keto full on. So I'm going to go eat that and we're going to head out of here for the night. We're going to get out of here tonight singing in a national park from Pokemon Gold and Silver, by the way. A remix from that. I like that mix too, by the way. I need to sit down and play Pokemon again. I keep getting distracted by Stardew because I'm finishing up Winter in Stardew Valley on my tablet. And I even went as far as to put a Game Boy on my phone. I can't put cartridges in it, so I can't get my old battery back up, but I have it on my phone. Alright, that's enough out of this. Let's get out of here for the night. Where's my outro music? Oh, that's right, I did a reset over the weekend. So it's closed. Alright, with that, we're done. We're out of here for the night. Thank you everybody who came by, hung out and chatted in the live chat. It's been a great time. We had a lot of fun tonight. We definitely did. We figured out that Alfalfa and the Spoon Kid are different people. We talked about the war in Ukraine and what's happening there. We did some presidential politics and got a lot done. A lot less than I thought we were going to, with as slow as the news was. But, I mean, there was a lot of real dense stuff about the Ukraine, so I can understand where it took us into a bunch of time for that. If you like what you see, go back and tell some friends, get some more people in here, and gather up. We are on here at 6 p.m. Central Time every single weekday, so come back and join us for that. Otherwise, come back and join us here tomorrow for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. It's going to be a fantastic time. Good night. Have a great time. Go grab some food. Get some rest. Call a loved one. Call someone you might have a crush on. I don't know. It's the rest of your night here. We'll be back here tomorrow for more news and more headlines. Take care. Have a good night. And until next time, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.